Hi guys, this is Korak from Edureka. Welcome to today's session on GCP Cloud Engineer Certification. So before we start the topic at hand, let me just tell you that I've been through the entire process of the certification and I am GCP certified as well. So let's just go through today's agenda, and with that I will also take you through my journey of how I prepared for the GCP Cloud Associate certification. So first thing we talk about is who is an associate cloud engineer, followed by why become an associate cloud engineer. Next, we come to the associate cloud engineer certification and what it's all about. So, next, we come to who is this certification for, followed by the different exam topics which are required for associate cloud engineer. And finally, we come to roles and responsibilities of a GCP cloud engineer. Also, if you do like our video, please do subscribe to the Edureka channel. And if you're looking for a GCP certification, please do check out the link in the comments below. So let's get started. The first thing we talk about is who is an associate cloud engineer. So when we talk about an associate cloud engineer, he is basically somebody who deploys applications, monitors operations, and manages enterprise solutions as well. So basically, they use the Google Cloud Console that you have and the command line interface to maintain one or more deployed solutions. And these deployed solutions are basically self-managed services. So you basically monitor operations, deploy applications, and manage an enterprise solution. So this is who an associate cloud engineer is, right? Now, side by side, we'll talk about why do we need to become a cloud engineer, right? Or why would you want to become a cloud engineer? So when we talk about this, we can see that the first reason is that the fact that there is an increasing demand for cloud engineers in the industry right now. So a GCP Associate Cloud Engineer certification will definitely give you a cutting edge. Next, we see that this certification leads to rampant gain in terms of job prospects, right? Right now, at this current moment, cloud has taken over the industry and every organization has moved their resources and operations to cloud, right? So, if you have a certification from Google Cloud Platform on the Associate Cloud Engineer, you are basically looking at a lot of job prospects. And once you have these certifications, what has happened is it has basically boosted your earnings. And from research, we can see that there is about around 84% of increase in general earnings for people who are certified. And the fact is that when you update your CV with this certification, you boost your chances of getting chosen in a job interview. So when you're basically sitting for an interview and you are GCP certified, along with a person who is definitely not certified, it gives you a cutting edge because you have that hands-on experience that others don't, right? It is a great opportunity to network with like-minded people and also association with GCP services. So you get a very hands-on experience when you go through the certification. And what it does is it gives you a very comprehensive experience with the different tools that GCP provides, right? Next up, we have the Associate Cloud Engineer certification. Now, before we get to this, let's just talk about a few things. Now, when we talk about Associate Cloud Engineer, what we can see that if you have an AWS or Azure background, what we can see that GCP Associate Cloud Engineer is similar, right? So the different study materials that you need are, let's say, Coursera, because it's a 2 hour examination. So you will have to have proper study material. So for study material, we have Coursera, we have Quick Labs, which will give you various, hands-on practice sessions so that you can get used to the GCP tools, right? Then we see that it is basically $125 plus taxes for applying for this exam, and it is an MCQ based exam, right? So you have to make sure that you basically practice a lot of test questions. Now, these test questions do not just come from books unless and until you get a hands on experience of your tools, you will not be able to answer specifically during the exam. So, what is best is the fact that you have these courses, right? And then we have the fact that you do not need prerequisites. So you don't really have to have a background where you are all knowing about cloud. So even if you don't know anything about GCP, it is a very simple process of learning these tools. And hands-on experience for about 6 months will definitely give you a certain edge over the others. And the last part is that GCP Cloud certification, what is recommended for people who want to really get into the certification is basically at least 6 months plus of hands-on experience with Google Cloud Platform, right? Also, another very important thing when you're applying for this exam is the type of questions that you have. Right. So here it is all about the breadth of the knowledge that you have and not the in-depth part. So GCP has various tools. So basically, if you know a bit of networking, if you know a bit of database, if you know a bit of web hosting, HTML, all of that is basically necessary for you to pass the Associate Cloud Engineer certification. So the breadth of your knowledge is very important. So let's say you know all about the database tools that GCP has to provide, but you have no knowledge of those networking tools that GCP provides. So that is going to be a problem. So when it comes to the Cloud Associate Engineer exam, this is something that is going to have databases, going to have networks, it's going to have other compute infrastructure, app development, hosting services, all of that together. So you need a knowledge of a bit of everything, right? And it is also quite similar to the AWS Associate Admin exam, right? So this is all about the Associate Cloud Engineer certification. Then we talk about who is this certification for? So who are the people who would want the certification? So the first thing is this certification is definitely for candidates who are interested in cloud engineering in specific and want a better pay, or let's say a very hands-on experience with what cloud engineering is. Then we talk about the fact that it is also for IT professionals who have some experience of working with GCP and want to hone their skills even more, right? So this is another type of peer repeat. So these are the other kind of people who would want to get certified. And thirdly, we have data architects, developers, and data engineers who are definitely looking for the certification also to get a very hands-on experience with this, because what it does, as we talked about before, it boosts up your CV like anything and gives you a better opportunity when compared to others when you're sitting for an interview. And definitely, when it comes to money, it'll boost up your salary as well. So next up, we come to the exam topics for Associate Cloud Engineer. Now, we have five different topics which are very broad, vague topics, which we will break down into separate pieces for you to understand what we are going through and what are the things that you have to study. So these are the things that you can look for in your Coursera courses or your Quick Labs courses. So the first thing we talk about is the fact that you have to basically set up a cloud solution environment. That is the first topic. Then comes the planning and configuring a cloud solution. That's another topic for your associate cloud engineer. The third topic is deploying and implementing a cloud solution. Fourth one is ensuring the successful operation of that cloud solution. And finally, you have to basically have configuring access and security for your cloud solutions. So these are the different topics that you have for associate cloud engineer. Now let's take a much more detailed look at what each of these topics has. So when you talk about the first topic, which is setting up a cloud solution environment, so in here, this topic will deal with certain things like creating resource hierarchies, applying organizational policies to resource hierarchy, granting members the IAM roles within the project, managing users and groups with cloud identity, enabling the APIs, provisioning and setting up projects. And there are many more actually. So rest of the things are managing billing configurations. Now, when it comes to billing, you have to make sure that when you're using Google Cloud Platform, you have billing enabled in your project, right? So when you come to billing configurations, you will have to create a billing account. You have to link that project to a billing account and establishing the budgets and alerts, right? And you'll also have to set up billing exports. So when you're done with managing billing configurations, what you have to do is install and configure the CLI specifically through Cloud SDK. Now, these are the various different topics inside setting up a cloud solution. So these are very important. Now, coming to the next topic, which is the second topic, which is planning and configuring a cloud solution. This is again a very broad topic which can be broken down into pieces. The first thing that you can read about in here is how to basically plan and estimate Google Cloud products using the pricing calculator, right? Then after that, when you've done that, what you can do is how to plan and configure the compute resources that you have. And when you're talking about planning and configuring compute resources, you can see that you can basically select appropriate compute choices for a given workload, use preemptive virtual machines and custom machine types. So you'll have to talk about different virtual machines that are present. You'll have to talk about how compute resources are using and how you can basically allocate resources for your VMs, all of that, right? And this is not the end of it. There are more. Let's say, for example, after you're done with that part, you can talk about how to plan and configure data storage options, right? Now, these data storage options, when you're considering, you can talk about product choices, choosing storage options. So these are the different topics that you have to go through when you are looking at planning and configuring cloud solutions. The third topic that you have is deploying and implementing a cloud solution. So in this topic, it deals about how do you deploy that cloud solution that you've already planned and created. So here I'm going to talk about deploying and implementing cloud compute engine resources. Now, compute engine is basically one of the tools on GCP where you can have your own virtual machine and you can basically have an auto-scaled managed instance group as well, right? So when you're talking about deploying and implementing a cloud solution, you have to talk about how do you launch an instance on Cloud Console, then how do you create an auto-scaled managed instance at all? Then you have to talk about uploading a custom SSH key for the instance. So here as well, you have the entire concept of having service accounts. Now, these you will only understand if you yourself have a hands-on of the Google Cloud platform yourself. And if you just go through and just play around with it a bit and just explore the different resources that it has. Also, an important concept is the installing and configuring of the cloud monitoring and cloud logging systems. So these are important when you talk about deploying and implementing cloud solutions. And questions related to deployment will always have certain things like creating also scaled instances and uploading SSH keys, all of that. So apart from Compute Engine, you can also talk about the Google Kubernetes Engine, which is another tool by Google Cloud Platform, right? So you can deploy and implement Google Cloud Platform Kubernetes Engine resources as well. Here as well, you talk about installing, configuring the CLI for Kubernetes. Then there's deploying a Kubernetes Engine cluster. So these are basically the things you need to do to deploy an instance or a cloud application on these compute engine or Kubernetes engine tools, right? So you'll have to basically know what deployment is, what containerization is, and how do you basically allocate the resources, and what is the best policies that you have to allocate those resources, and how can you cut the costs, right? So your main aim is to basically cut costs because on-premises systems will be very expensive and cloud helps you to basically make your business much more agile, right? So you'll have to know how do you basically cut costs with this. Next up, we have the ensuring successful operation of a cloud solution. So once you've deployed it, you have to maintain it, right? So you'll have to manage the compute engine tasks. Let's say, like beforehand, we talked about how do you deploy an application on compute engine or an instance in compute engine. So once that instance has been deployed, what you do is you basically talk about how do you manage the VM instance, how do you connect to it, how do you attach a GPU, how do you basically go through the VM that is there, which is a running inventory. And also, apart from this, you'll have to see that there is working with images, snapshots, and different instance groups, which ensures that your deployed application or instance is running perfectly, right? So, just like the SDLC, when you have planning, designing, deployment, and management, here as well, you have deployment and planning before that. And once your application is deployed, you'll have to ensure that it is running successfully and you have to maintain it. So after, just like we talked about the compute engine, we can talk about Kubernetes engine as well, or any other tool you have which is required for deployment. So if you're talking about Kubernetes engine, you'll have to make sure that you go through how do you view current clusters and the cluster inventory that it has. How do you browse Docker images? and view their details. What is an artifact registry? Working with node pools. What are node pools? What are pods? All of these. So these are the different things that you will have to go through when you're talking about the ensuring successful operation of cloud solutions, right? So when we talk about node pools and pods, node pools is something which is basically group of nodes within a cluster, right? So you have clusters in your Google Kubernetes engine, and a group of clusters which have the same configuration will basically be called a node pool, right? So from the node pool, you select different nodes as well. So after that, let's go to the next one, which is the last topic, which is configuring access and security for your instances that you create. So when you talk about configuring access, you have to talk about the IAM, right? So IAM will basically be required to access your different projects, your instances as well, and you can basically make different policies on IAM so that you can make your instances run as you like. So you will have to first view the different IAM policies that are available, maybe create a different IAM policy for the instance that you are running, and then manage the various role types and define the roles that you have for each user in GCP project, right? So then we come to service accounts. Now, when we talk about service accounts, like I did before, first you have to know what a service account is. Now, service account is basically a special type of Google account, which is intended to represent a non-human user, right? That needs to authenticate and authorize the data and the Google APIs that are trying to access, right? So service accounts are used in scenarios where you have to run workloads on different virtual machines. So this is also basically important when you have been using Compute Engine or when you're using Kubernetes Engine. So service accounts are important. So what you have to know about service accounts is that how you have to create service accounts, how do you use service accounts in IAM policies with minimum permissions, how do you assign resources to a service account, and lastly, how do you manage service account impersonations, right? So these are the different topics that you have when it comes to the exam topics for associate cloud engineer. So lastly, we come to the responsibilities of a GCP cloud engineer. So when we talk about roles and responsibilities, the first thing we talk about is the planning, designing, and deploying cloud applications. That itself is the main objective and work of an associate cloud engineer, right? So they are responsible for the entire cloud presence of the organization and the entire process of planning, gathering resources, designing, and deploying a cloud app is basically their main responsibility. Apart from that, maintenance and support is also one of their responsibilities. So, post deployment, the cloud engineer has to basically continuously maintain checks and updates on the apps that are there, right? So, these maintenances that they have and updates that they have on their resources or on the applications that are there in clouds are based on cloud requirements, and the main objective is to basically continuously improve these applications so that it best meets the client's needs. And finally, we talk about management. Now, management is basically the fact that all cloud resources and the utilization of each service is managed by the cloud engineer, right? So management comes into play when it is all about using tools and resources to the optimum, but also making sure that you are using the minimum amount of cost that are there. So you have to make sure that your application runs perfectly and smoothly, but also you cannot afford to spend a lot of money on, let's say, VMs and other resources. So that is not the idea of cloud, right? So you manage your resources, your costs to get the best possible result that you can. As an associate cloud engineer, you'll have to have management skills that are important to achieve in day-to-day operations for an organization. And once that is done, your responsibilities are over. So with that, we come to the end of the session. I hope that this has been very helpful for you. And with that, I end it. Thank you and have a nice day.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!